and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, two absolute legends of motorsports. For the second straight year, they come together on a beautiful summer day and a glorious summer weekend of racing as the Ferrari Challenge returns to Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Hi, everybody. I'm Greg Creamer. Great to have you all with us. We'll be joined by Ryan Marine, who'll be pulling double duty down in the pits for some of the pre-race and post-race festivities with me in the booth as the race unfolds. And let's take a look at this remarkable calendar, altered a little bit due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but we've already had Daytona Road Atlanta, Indianapolis the end of July. We're here for that. Circuit of the Americas the end of August, Laguna the end of September, Watkins Glen, and then the Finale Mondiale in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates in the Middle East. A remarkable series of venues, a remarkable series coming to visit them. This weekend, Indianapolis, right in the breadbasket, the heart belt here of America and the heartland of this great country, and so awesome to be back here on what is a very challenging infield road course here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. One the drivers enjoyed participating at last year immensely. Here you take a look at it. The track itself, 14 turns, 2.5 miles essentially, 3.9 kilometers if you will. And as you can see, it runs the opposite direction of the Indy 500. So it makes for some interesting moments here as you run backwards, if you will, down the front straight into turn one, then wind your way around to the infield. This section of track, very quick left-right chicane onto the Holman Boulevard backstretch, and then back around and working your way through. As you can see, it is getting toasty today. We anticipated that happening. The humidity has dropped. That's a good thing. So it's 82 degrees. The real feel, as they call it, though, is up into the 90s. And for 30 minutes in these cars, that is going to keep things interesting. And as we take a look at the cars out on their installation laps, and as we're watching these cars, how about we go for a ride on board one of these cars around this amazing venue with Cooper MacNeil, two-time champion. Enjoy this, folks.
Cooper MacNeil here, driver of the number 63 WeatherTech Racing Ferrari Challenge Evo car. Let's go for a lap around Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So here we are at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in our number 63 WeatherTech Racing Ferrari Evo Challenge car. Coming on the front straight here, it's important to start the lap with a lot of full throttle to maximize the speed down this long straightaway. There we are across the bricks, the famous Indy bricks. Going into turn one, looking for the 500 board, trying to get to the 500 board to hit the brakes, all the way down to third gear, very heavy brake zone into turn one here at Indy Motor Speedway. There's a lot of horsepower in this car, so it's better to stay up a gear than to be sliding the rears around. Turn two, turn three, going into turn four now, a bit of understeer. So I try to get as much curbing as I can possibly take there without upsetting the car. Here we are flat through turn 5 and 6, the quick chicane onto the middle straight here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Up through the gears, listening to the twin turbo V8 behind me. Down to the 500 brake marker, all the way down to third gear, one of the slowest corners on the racetrack. It's important to get the car all the way to the right side and brake straight in a straight line for turn 9 here. Use all the curbs, turn 10, all the curbs as well. And rolling on the throttle here, trying to maximize the exit speed here, but a little difficult with the damp patches we had this morning. In the dry, this particular area on the racetrack is flat, but as you can see, it's still damp and we have a bit of traffic here. Catch this yellow car, but thankfully he lets me by, turning in for turn 13, and it's important to get a little oversteer there. It's important to stay left here to maximize the speed, again, onto the front straightaway here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. A busy lap, a quick lap, but a fun one here at Indy Motor Speedway.
Yeah, fun lap indeed, and funner still this year with the new Evo package on these Ferrari 488 Challenge cars, which has ramped up the downforce capability of the cars, both front and rear, particularly on the front where it needed a little bit more, and everybody says it's a little bit more tunable in terms of that downforce, so you can use ride height adjustments to take away or give more downforce to the front, not just the rear of the car, and that has made it interesting. This track, in talking to a number of the coaches as well as some of the top drivers, obviously, you need speed through 11 and 14. Those are key areas of the track, and the downforce pays big dividends there. But the other part of it where the downforce comes into play is down into turn 1 and turn 7, the two best overtaking areas. Downforce means deeper, later braking. And they say that this track braking is massive because you're frequently coming from very high speeds down to very tight corners, so you need effective brakes. And the person who can control the braking and be deeper on the brakes is generally somebody who's going to have opportunity to make more overtakes during the course of the race. You can be creative in certain parts of the track where you might not otherwise see some passing if you get a run and somebody has a little bit of a bobble. But you want to make sure you're effective in the key passing areas, and this downforce is helping. Obviously, it just keeps the drivers, gives them a little bit more confidence, the ability to flat-foot it in a couple of more sections around the track. And they've also done some enhancements inside the car, particularly the steering wheel, making it more like the 488 GT3 car. So it's a little bit more like an airplane cockpit when you look inside of it, but a little bit more effective and efficient as well. And the one thing that hasn't changed, 670 plus horsepower, these 488 Challenge Evo cars, remarkable power, far more than their GT3 counterparts, who are regulated by rule to have less power. And with the new downforce, these cars are becoming, I think, some of the most respected fun cars for anybody to drive. And everybody that's here is certainly enjoying it immensely. In qualifying, we had lap times because of the new Evo package and the development of a new Pirelli tire as well. And we'll talk about in just a minute. But lap times in some of the classes over a second faster than what they ran last year. And that says an awful lot. And the new Pirelli tire, most people that I've talked to said it isn't really quicker over one lap. That the other tire was very good at. But what this new tire from Pirelli does exceptionally well is keeps its life, if you will, much deeper into the race. So you don't have to manage the tire quite so seriously and, in fact, maybe underperform for a little bit to keep the tire alive. Now you can push this tire a little bit more, and that's all come from driver feedback. And that's all part of this entire program. Ferrari Challenge, Corsa Piloti, the Club Challenge. Through it all, everybody at Ferrari listens very closely to what the drivers and the teams are saying. And so as we see the grid starting to form up, it is time for us to honor this nation and this beautiful part of it here in Indianapolis with the national anthem. All right, honoring our country, and now it's time to focus on racing. And there's a guy here who comes in second in the points in the Coppa Shell category. He's with Ryan Marine. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Greg. Yeah, that's exactly right. You're talking about Jay Schreiben, who made that jump from the Coppa Shell AM to Coppa Shell, and he's doing a great job of it so far, like you talked about. I had a chance to speak with Jay a little bit earlier here in the weekend about that jump in class, as well as we're getting to race here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Take a look. 3, 2, 1. Jay Schreiben racing here in the racing capital of the world, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. What is the significance of getting to race a Ferrari around such a historic place?
I mean, it's an amazing thing being from Michigan. I've known of Roger Penske all my life, and this is just an iconic, unbelievable racetrack. I'm not so good here, but I love it. Being on that pavement, coming down that front straight, it gives you chills. So it's a really awesome experience to be here.
Well, clearly you're loving your racing this year, moving up from Coppa Shell AM to Coppa Shell through the first 4 rounds and then a little bit here. How would you assess that transition?
So it's taken a lot of hard work. The competition is, much better, better drivers, and so I'm putting in the work, and I'm having a great time. It's really it's challenging. It keeps challenging me, right? So, there's nothing like the feeling getting out of that race car. It was a P3 qualifying, but I feel like I'm on top of the world. So, very happy.
Best of luck in the race.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
He has been such a great addition to this paddock. He's just fun for starters, fun-loving, but very, very passionate about going fast, very, very passionate about Ferraris. And you combine those two things along with his just great demeanor, and he's got speed. He's very, very quick. He's very new to this, so his racecraft, he continues to hone that. And as he said, I'm putting in the work. And that's, with the coaches, his personal coaching with the Corsa Pilati coaches, headed by Didier Taze, the legendary sports car driver who's the head coach here. All of that comes together to help these drivers that don't have a lot of experience to sort of flatten that learning curve just a little bit. And Jay has shown great pace, and he's starting to show a little bit more patience during the races. And as a result, he made that leap. He was so close to the championship last year in Coppa Shell Am, just a few points off of a Horseman, ended up second. He, along with Brad, made the move up into the Coppa Shell category. And right now, they are both in the top 5 in the points. So that says quite a bit about it as you take a look at the field here, and pretty impressive front row. Kevin Milstein put together one heck of a lap, a 127 flat, essentially, in his number 138 Ferrari of San Diego machine, and just outpaced Jim Booth in the 144 Ferrari of Atlanta 48 Challenge Evo car, and that put them both on the front row. But then you got Schreibman and Horseman right up behind them here, and then a huge field of Coppa Shell Am competitors. By my reckoning, it's some 20 cars that are going to be contesting in that class today, and that's going to make this race absolutely fascinating. And Todd Coleman, who is on the pole in the Coppa Shell Am category, the Ferrari of Denver, number 169, comes in here. His lap was a 128.3, so still reasonably impressive in terms of the overall field. So it's going to make it interesting. But now it's time to get interesting. For that, let's get back down to Ryan.
All right, it's time to fire these cars up. So drivers, start your Ferrari engines.
Well done, sir. Well done indeed. And this field springing to life. And you'll see everybody clearing the grid relatively quickly. As we said, the temperature is actually a little bit better than what we were expecting to perhaps see in terms of highs right now. It's 82. They were expecting a little bit warmer than that. However, the real feel up into the 90s, 92 degrees right now. So the last thing you want is to have these drivers strapped in and then sit for a while here and get a little bit of heat soak themselves. And they want to get these cars out moving and getting as much air as they can flowing through these remarkable high-performance machines. That's a lot of what this Evo package does, along with helping with downforce, drivability, and such. They've also done some work on making sure that components are cooled better. Part of the front-end treatment is redirecting and better airflow to brakes for cooling on that. If you look incredibly closely, they're not very big, but underneath the mirrors on each side of the car, there is a little aerofoil. And if you know anything about aerodynamics, you look at it and you go, that looks like it would generate lift. You can see it, that little black thing right underneath that white mirror on these cars. The shape of it, you would think that would generate lift. Well, it actually does. It's minuscule, but what it's designed to do is nothing in terms of downforce or aero performance on the car. It's redirecting hot air from the radiators to make sure that air does not then re-enter the car. Those big ducts on the bodywork just in front, up and in front of those rear wheels, which are intercooler inlets for the engine and to keep the turbos cool. And so they're making sure that heated radiator air does not flow in. I mean, these Ferrari engineers are thinking of everything. And obviously, if a car runs warm, it loses a little bit of performance. So everything they're doing is to make these cars faster and longer. And who doesn't love that? A Ferrari that's even better than the previous Ferrari. Of course, that's what the company's known for, isn't it? That's not really a surprise. So we are out on our pace and installation lap. These are 30-minute races, and this is the 5th race of the championship. We're at the 3rd round of the series. for 2020. Each of the rounds has 2 races, so this would be race 5 in the championship chase. Combined Coppa Shell and Coppa Shell Am. And let's take a look at the starting lineup. As we said, Kevin Milstein, Ferrari of San Diego on the pole. Jim Booth in the Ferrari of Atlanta entry alongside. Then Jay Schreibman, Collie Ferrari of Detroit. The 163, then the 105 of Brad Horseman, then the 169 Todd Coleman, Ferrari of Denver, and Justin Wetherill, points leader in the 199 Ferrari of Central Florida entry. Dave Musial Jr., Ferrari Lake Forest, Jan Bernier, Ferrari of Seattle, 119. Christopher Aiken, Ferrari of Houston, the 173 Cyril Choksky, Ferrari of Denver, John Lennon, Ferrari of San Francisco, 107, Mike Krekel, 188 Ferrari of Beverly Hills, 131 Luis Peruzquia, the Ferrari of Tampa Bay, 113 Kirk Beyervalt, Ferrari of Beverly Hills, Lisa Clark, Ferrari of Beverly Hills, number 127, Roy Carroll, Foreign Cars Italia entry. Then Charles Whittall in the 166. Then Michael Watt, the Ferrari of Atlanta, 150. Neil Langford, the Ferrari South Bay, 153. Anthony DiCarlo in the Wide World Ferrari 100. Eileen Bildman in the Ferrari Long Island entry. Great to have her with us. Bubba Roof in the Foreign Cars Italia machine. Jose Mendoza, the Ferrari of San Francisco entry. And Robert Hertzberg in the Collie Ferrari of Detroit entry. That is your field, 26 cars in total. And Eileen Bildman wanted to just do a quick shout out here. And look at that beautiful pace car, the F8 Tributo, the Hublot safety car. Absolutely stunning vehicle. And bringing this field around, look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. And just an honor to have these machines being led around by that glorious Ferrari as well. All right. Safety vehicle is in, and it is up to Kevin Milstein as he is making his way. You can see Jim Booth right with him, very racy, wants to make sure he is ready alongside as the field rolls on. Booth actually nosing ahead. Got to be careful with that because it is the pace driver, and they go green. And wow, Kevin Milstein was laying back a little bit, and Booth eased away, and they threw the green. So Jim Booth suddenly gets a big advantage. And you can see Schreibman and Horseman absolutely already duking it out for that third spot. And Schreibman's got the position. Horseman runs wide but forces his way to the inside. And as he gets then to turn 2, gives him that inside line, and looks like he is going to be there or thereabouts. So Booth forcing the issue a little bit on the start, and they let it go anyway. So here comes Milstein trying to regroup and get after him. And then, wow, Schreibman really wide at the exit of that infield chicane and ran way, way over there, and he may have dirtied up his tires, and that's going to make it tough to break, and he gets swarmed. Big move there by the 199 of Justin Wetherill, coming from deep in the pack to slice through on Schreibman. He's also got the 132 of Jan Bernier right there as well. But we are now working our way around looking to complete lap number 1. And it is Booth leading. And I think Coleman has held on to the lead. Have to confirm that. It might have been Wetherill who got very, very aggressive in the early going here and has moved up. We'll track that for you. But there's Schreibman, who started in that third spot and absolutely got swarmed. Ryan joining me here in the booth. And an interesting start with Booth getting way ahead of Milstein, and then they went green anyway. And then Schreibman getting swallowed up a bit.
Yeah, it showed up in the booth at the right time because it was unfolding right before our eyes. My goodness, what an interesting start that was, right from the drop of the green.
Yeah, exactly. Schreibman now is dropped officially down into the 6th spot as Booth leads over Milstein. Horseman right up there in 3rd. And this is an impressive run by Horseman at the second race for this category of car at Road Atlanta, our most recent round. He had a big off at the exit of turn 12. Almost saved it, and then it snapped around on him, and he did impact the barriers on the left side of the track down by pit out. So they had to get this car turned around. Of course, they've had some time to be able to do that, and he's responded with a great run here. And he is, of course, your defending Coppa Shell Am category champion, and he's working his way back up and showing, once again, impressive speed.
Yeah, what a season that was a year ago. 3 wins, 8 podiums, 3 poles, a couple of times the fastest race lap. And so seeing him now step up a higher level of competition, as you heard from Jay Schreiben. He was talking about that in my interview with him as well. The biggest difference was just the strength in this field, maybe not in the numbers, but certainly in the quality. And it's maybe the biggest curiosity to see the pace that we saw from these two guys a year ago. How does that transition? And so far here, at least at Indy, the early returns have been positive.
Absolutely they have. And as I said, Schreiben just kind of got squeezed, lost all that momentum, and it doesn't take much. And he's faded, so he's going to really have to hustle if he wants to get back into play for a potential podium here in the Coppa Shell category. Booth, Milstein, and Horseman have driven away a little bit. Coleman did hang on to the lead, but again, Justin Wetherill is going to be relentless. We know what he's all about. And Jan Bernier actually sneaking around Dave Musial Jr., who too has dropped. He had a good qualifying run. Dave did third in class, and right now he now sits back in the 5th spot, so he's lost a little ground.
Yeah, that's the case for sure. A guy who's relatively new to some of this. It runs in the family, as you've been talking about, and Dave 2.0 acquitting himself quite well during the qualifying session, still maybe trying to find the sea legs a little bit, and don't have a ton of time to do it in these Ferrari Challenge races, just a half an hour to work with.
Well, and I think that's it. You know, he did the Club Challenge last year, which shows you and tells you how to go fast in one of these cars, understand the physics, get the car to perform. But there's nothing like side-by-side, door-to-door racing here, as we have a full course yellow has been called here in the early going at just about 4 minutes into this 30-minute timed event. So that's going to compress things just a little bit, and there is the car. Couldn't quite grab the number that is off to the left over in turn 11. And that is not a spot. That's a fast section of track, and if somebody gets it wrong there where that car is sitting, it becomes a bit of a target. There it is. And so I think smart move that they went with the caution.
Yeah, that's effectively oval turn 2 going the other direction. Good to see the car up and moving once again. But yeah, coming out of the infield up onto the banking there, that is pretty high speed into that 12-13 complex. That's a pretty good passing zone here on this Indianapolis road course.
It's going to be interesting now to see if Schreiben can use this to sort of refocus, do a little bit of a reset here. You take a look at his times. He turned to 127.4, and Coleman and Wetherill were in the low to mid 128. So Schreiben, in theory, has the pace here. But as we've said so often here, it's one thing to be faster than somebody, it's another thing to get around them sometimes. And talked to a number of the coaches here, Ryan, and they said there's a line around this track that is unquestionably the line for a fast lap. But this track, many tracks have this, but they said this track is particularly susceptible to being able to drive a lot of different racing and especially defensive lines.
That's really interesting. I wonder what makes this one unique. One thing that comes to mind is it's relatively flat. Other than the banking, you don't have much in the way of elevation change around here, and I wonder if that might provide a few more options.
I think part of it is, and you know, there are a couple of tricky spots, notably into turn 12, because you exit 10, you climb the banking, and then right as you get ready to hit that braking zone where you want to be able to go deep and have a little banking to help propel you down the corner, it flattens out. So if you time it wrong, you're suddenly really hot down into turn 12, and that can be problematic. So, but I think part of it, too, is that just because of the width of this track in certain areas, there are certain places where you can run a little bit different line and still get away with it.
Yeah, exactly right, and it'll be fun to watch that as this unfolds. It sounds like we expect to be going green next time by. I believe that's lights out on the safety car there, so that's really good news. It was a quick full course yellow, but it does give the reset to a couple of these guys. Schreiben most notably, given the fact he started third and has dropped back 3 positions here in the opening couple of laps. I think he'll be up on the wheel trying to claw his way back up to the front and get to his old sparring partner in Horseman.
I would think so. And the other guy, I think, is Kevin Milstein, who had pole and, brought him around a little slower than Jim Booth wanted and got in front of him, and then they threw the green. So if he times this restart well, maybe he can get back into it just a little bit. Again, those top 4 cars, all the Coppa Shell cars here, had qualified well within a second of each other. So if Schreiben can join that pack, that's going to be some really good racing, but he's got to do it quick.
Yeah, he does. That's it, right? I mean, even though we were only under the safety car for a couple of laps, that takes off 4 minutes. That's a pretty big percentage of this race.
And here we go. Green flag flies early, and Booth rolled into the throttle well in turn 14. I think he knew that Milstein was going to be doing anything he could to come after him. But look at this little scrap here as Coleman going after Horseman. They are 2 different classes, but Todd Coleman has proven to be incredibly aggressive and racy in this championship. and thought about it there. Horseman did exactly the right thing, and sometimes the best defense is just a good offense, and he drove a really quick line through one and thwarted it.
Well, that's a really interesting dynamic here. Anytime you have multiple classes, you have this to some degree, but when the classes run effectively, well, actually identically the same car,
yes,
it really comes down to the drivers. There's nothing other than driver skill that separates the classes, and so you have a case there. We've got drivers of different classes fighting amongst each other. Do you go for it? How much risk do you take? Overall, doesn't really matter for the championship, but you also want to put that gap in between yourself and the chasing car if possible.
Lots of dynamics that you've got to be thinking about here in this game of high-speed chess, as I call it. When it's the same class of car for everybody, and I mean drivers as well, it's like high-speed checkers. You just leapfrog that guy in front of you. But when you've got different categories of drivers, it becomes a little bit more of an intricate design that you have to deal with here. You've got to think corners ahead. It was interesting after Road Atlanta hearing the very impressive young man who is currently leading the points in Coppa Shell Am, Justin Weather, will sit second in the class right now, made the comment. He said the second race in Road Atlanta, he said that was, in my mind, and keep in mind the successes he had at Daytona, he said that was my first real race. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said because that was the one where I was finally comfortable enough in the car where I was able to think corners ahead, could make passes, was able to be aggressive without going overboard. He said that was what really felt good, and I think that's that bit you finally get comfortable with the chess pieces, and then you start to really get creative in the moves, and it showed with some great runs.
It's amazing, isn't it? That switch just flips at a certain point, and it's hard to say. Every driver's development is a little bit different, but at a certain point, all right, I'm comfortable with the car, I know my surroundings, I know the people I'm racing against, and all of a sudden you're capable of thinking 2-3 moves ahead, whereas before maybe you were just focused on your own racing line in that moment. And seeing that development, a lot of credit has to go to, big move there up the inside. Nate, did it work though?
Yeah, he slipped through. That was Charles Whittall. It was a nice pass. And a pass like that in traffic, you need both of the guys you're dealing with to give you a little bit of respect and just that smidge of room. Because the guy you were passing, that's easy enough, but the guy in front of you, if he doesn't realize that you're coming in with a head of steam and give you that little bit of a margin, then you can still have a collision with a guy you weren't even intending to pass.
Right. Yeah. It takes a lot of cooperation
yes.
in the best of circumstances, right? When it's just a simple one-on-one kind of attack situation. But yeah, when you throw more cars into the mix, there's a lot of different moving pieces. And quick way to put a bow on the previous conversation, I know you've talked some already in our qualifying shows about the level of coaching that goes into this series, and for these drivers, especially ones that are new to racing, at least at this level, having that kind of coaching from big names who've done it all, they've seen it all, that really accelerates that learning process and flipping that switch.
Well, yes, it does. And tell you, I think figuring the process out is Whittall. That was another late-breaking move down on no less a driver than Christopher Aiken, who had qualified 5th in class. So Whittall is just quickly cruising up through this pack here, doing a very nice job. That first pass was on Luis Perusquia, and now Whittall, and he has moved up immediately now up into the 7th spot. And that's fun to see a driver that doesn't have a lot of experience who is really getting coached up well and being able to put those kind of moves on.
Yeah, didn't get the kind of results he was looking for in the last round at Road Atlanta, 14th and 21st, but clearly put that layoff to use.
Yep.
Maybe did spend some time watching footage or reviewing data or just getting more coaching. And we talk about it as a downtime, but really the drivers who are succeeding in all forms of motorsports that have restarted, they put that downtime to use. Sim racing, another avenue for this, and those who put the work in when everyone else was sitting on the couch are benefiting.
Ooh, that was a move from way, way back by the number 113 of Kirk Bayervalt. He had a great head of steam as he came out at 10 through 11 and just threw it down to the inside into 12th, but then ran way wide. And it was, as we were talking about, again, an opportunity for the driver that he was overtaking to sense what was happening side by side down into turn 1. And again, there's that respect and cooperation. Beautiful move by the 132 Jan Bernier. as he squeezes his way past. That was a really, really nice move as he's working his way up through the pack.
I've covered a lot of races for a lot of series on this road course over the years, and you don't usually see that level of respect. That was really great to see because, again, this is the teamwork we're talking about, right?
Yep.
It takes two to get through that corner cleanly and continue to race on, and that's exactly what we saw.
Well, you know, it's a doubleheader weekend, and we're familiar with those, obviously, so every once in a while it's like, well, how hard do I push or defend or whatever if this could end in tears and I got another race tomorrow? So sometimes this first race you might be a little more genteel than you might be tomorrow. But then again, points are points.
Yep, exactly. And you look at how close so many of these championships are, even if we're not talking about first and second, but maybe a little bit further back. Those positions matter to the people involved, and it's hard to leave points on the table. If you see the opening, you got to take it. And credit to all for putting on a good show for us wheel to wheel.
Yeah, truly. That was Cyril Choksi right there in that blue car with the red and white roof on it, that Bernier. They've been having a good little battle here. And right behind them is John Lennon. We'll talk more about them in a moment, as I think we're watching now Schreibman, who's looking a bit racy, trying to figure out a way by Todd Coleman. Coleman has been passed by Wetherill. And so Wetherill now, the 199, has taken the lead in the Coppa Shell AM category and set fast race lap in that class, a 129.485 to boot.
Well, this goes back to the multi-class aspect I was talking about for Schreibman and Coleman. This doesn't matter, but neither of them want to be separated from the car they are chasing. That's Wetherill for Coleman and Horseman for Schreibman. A pass would get Schreibman closer to Horseman, and if Coleman would let Schreibman by, which I'm sure is what Jay would love to see, that means there's a car in between him and his quarry, the class leader no less. So it's a difficult balancing act. It's that chess game you talked about, and it's all playing out at well over 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. I think we just saw another pass. I think Choksi got back by on Bernier. Those guys, they're just swapping positions every lap here. And behind them is a guy named John Lennon, coached by Johnny O'Connell. And John has had a horrible couple of test and practice days here, involved in contact both days. And none of it real severe, but the second day was enough that they couldn't run that car. So when he got out qualifying, he was basically had borrowed a teammate's car, had driven it. They threw the setup on as best they could, and he went out and put in a pretty decent qualifying lap. And he didn't run Daytona, so he's only been racing in this series since Road Atlanta. That's pretty impressive.
Well, the good news for him is that that's when the Evo came online. So everyone is kind of learning at the same rate, even though he's done 2 fewer races than everyone else in the field. He's kind of on the same level in terms of familiarity with this race car testing, outside of the race weekends notwithstanding. But he debuted very strong, got a podium in class in his first race at Road Atlanta, finished 12th in the second race there. And great to have teammates, clearly, and teammates you can trust, because he's driving with a lot of confidence. You can't put in these kind of times in a setup that's unfamiliar to you if you don't trust the guy who passed it off to you from inside that same stable.
Well, that's what threw me off. I said I thought that Choksi had gone back by. It was actually Lennon who's running that yellow car. That's his teammate, J.C. Soule, said, no, you go ahead and run it here. I think J.C. was here just doing Club Challenge. And so they let John get in that car, and he, again, had qualified. A pretty remarkable 7th in class on a car he had driven.
Yeah.
But he got out and he said, these guys at these teams are just amazing because it feels virtually identical to the car that I had, and he's now marched his way up into 4th. Really
impressive stuff, and clearly just getting more and more comfortable by the lap, putting in good lap times as well. Just a little bit off the pace from Bernier the last time by, but clearly up at the ante here, coming up onto the front straightaway. And this is a great place to get that slipstream going.
Yeah, and a good draft here, and he's there. I mean, he's close enough that he could be feeling. You could tell Bernier realizes it, that he's close enough. He might have an opportunity. Lennon looks to the inside. Now it's an outbreaking battle down into 1. Lennon, too hot, and you can almost see that happening. And part of the problem is you get down to that part of the track, it's a little dirtier because the line's not there. And what happens is, and Choxy thought that Lennon was going to come across on him and lifted at just the wrong moment. That's a matter of pure physics right there. All the weight went to the nose and around the back came.
Yep, that's one of the things they teach you in driving schools right off the bat. You think, all right, I'm feeling my car spinning, let off the gas. But no, that's not what you want to do. That moves the weight to the front of the car and lightens the rear, which is already light if you feel like you're about to spin out. And I think you're exactly right that that's what we just saw. I'm not sure that Lennon actually was going to come in front of Choxy there, but I could see why Choxy would think that.
Absolutely.
And that's not what you want to see. You don't want to see that bright yellow Ferrari rejoining right in front of you. And here, let's take a look at the replay. First, this braking maneuver.
Yep, and part of it is when you get to a certain point there, the ABS the brakes go numb because you can't push them any harder.
That's right.
So you don't have any feel. But then he joins right there. Ooh, and an off here, the 176 of Lance Colley, Ferrari of Atlanta, pretty well buried into the gravel here, and I'm not sure at what point of the track this is. Doesn't look like he really got even into that tire wrap, but he's augured into the gravel pretty deeply here.
Well, that's what the gravel's there to do.
Exactly.
Try and slow you down. Let's see if we can figure out what happened.
Oh, just locked up going into 4.
That's a tough place because you're trying to get your braking done and then get turned. And maybe it was putting a little steering in with the braking, asking too much of those tires, and you go sliding off like that. Good news is it doesn't look like any damage really, but the crew's going to be busy trying to get that gravel out because it finds all those little nooks and crannies, doesn't it?
And a problem there for Booth.
Wow.
The leader suddenly very slow down the Holman backstretch. Boy, big developments here right as that caution came out. And of course you can't pass under a yellow, so the field's slowing down. But generally the rule is if there's somebody who's clearly in trouble in front of you, then yes, you may pass. But I have to give credit there to that driver. I think it was Woodall who said, well, I'm going to be very careful about this. And I think part of the reason is and now Booth gets it restarted. You always wonder there, was that just the old Control-Alt-Delete reset thing? But still doesn't look like it's going all that quickly. But at the most recent round at Road Atlanta, it was a phenomenal battle in the Coppa Shell Am category, and it got turned on its ear after the race ended because there was a full course, or not a full course, there was a station yellow for Horseman's car, and a number of the drivers at the sharp end of that passed under that yellow and got 30-second penalties as a result. So I think that's transferred through to these guys going, yeah, I'm not going to make a pass here. We're under a full course yellow.
And that's the point of those penalties, right? You want that lesson to sink in, and I think the lesson has had some time to sink in and clearly has. So.
Well, it ripples through
a
paddock when that happens, and people go, wow, they're serious about this, and it stops, and that's great.
And for rules like that are there purely for safety purposes, that's really what you want to see. You want to make sure that all the drivers are paying attention to the corner workers. They're adhering to the flags from the marshals when they come in. And, yeah, I certainly understand the desire to be cautious and make sure that any pass that you make when it comes under yellow is one that you are allowed to make. And with a stranded car like that was clearly all right to do.
Yes. Now, there is one upside in Ferrari Challenge of when you do a full course yellow, because the official safety vehicles are stunning.
Yes.
And this is the F8 Tributo, so we get to see this beautiful machine one more time here. Obviously, we want to get back to racing as fast as we can, but that is one glorious car here. And here's the problem, sort of a double deal as they're getting to Booth here. I wanted to go back to a discussion we were having a little bit. As you said, getting comfortable in the car and everything. For a novice that gets in a car of this level of performance, things happen so fast. Everything is just incredibly fast. The great drivers, some of it innate, but some of it can be taught, and it comes with experience, is you start slowing stuff down. And it really comes down to bandwidth, doesn't it? Mental bandwidth. Because once you can process stuff a little bit better and you can compartmentalize, that's when you can get stuff to slow down, and then you can react to stuff almost before it happens because you are thinking ahead. You're not just reacting.
Right. You're making decisions in advance and kind of playing the traffic out. You're seeing how things are going to develop before you get there. And to your point about how some of this can be taught. That is kind of a change in philosophy, I would say, in the last couple of decades. Driver coaches really weren't a thing for a long time,
That's
and
true.
we're seeing that embraced more and more, and maybe nowhere better than here in Ferrari Challenge when you've got Didier Taze leading the instruction. I mean, oh my goodness, how can you not stop and just listen to anything he's going to say? And on down the line, the official instructors from the series, a lot of these drivers carry their own coaches as well who have put together remarkable careers of their own in addition to the coaching their champion drivers. And just walking around the paddock, there are a lot of faces I'm used to seeing at pro race weekends, and they're here in a coaching capacity.
I have to give a shout out to Didier. I got myself in real trouble with a producer. I think it was 2002. I was doing the Grand Am series, and it was my first visit to Mont Tremblant. And turn 2 at Mont Tremblant is one of the most staggeringly fast, scary, amazing corners in the world. And people told me later that the producer would go, okay, I need to talk to Creamer. Where is somebody get on a golf cart and go to turn 2? And I was there because I was watching Didier in a Ferrari 333 SP come through turn 2.
Yep.
It was mesmerizing watching him carry speed through there and have that, as you said, that level heading a group of phenomenal coaches is really, truly remarkable. And that's all part of this entire program. You know, the Corsa Pilati concept, Club Challenge, every step of the way. You know, if you buy a 488, the dealer that you buy it from says, when you go, I'm interested in maybe driving this in a more competitive scenario, they go, guess what? We have an affiliation with this team. And if you want to try out running in Ferrari Challenge, we can hook you up with that team. And that's where it starts. So you do the Corsa Pilati, then you do Club Challenge, then you do coaching. And one of the big things that's changed now in this era, too, that I think has helped a lot of these drivers, in this break, you know, when we're quarantined, we can't do anything. Well, now you've got online coaching from a distance. So you can be sitting at your simulator at home talking to your coach who's 1,000 miles away, but getting everything you're getting and working with you that way. So the coaching never really has to stop.
It's a brave new world, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine telling this to Alberto Ascari, who you talked about earlier, telling him, hey, you know what, if you want to prepare for your Indy 500 run in a Ferrari, why don't you hop on a sim and we can set you up with a guy who's got laps around Indianapolis and get you up to speed. I'm not sure Alberto needed it, but I'm sure he would have taken it, right?
Sure,
Any
absolutely.
of these tools, and it's a completely different world, and I think we're still learning how best to utilize all of these tools, whether it's the data or the simulations or what have you.
I remember asking Sam Posey once, I said, you know, back in the 70s when you were racing Ferrari 512s at Le Mans, they didn't have, they had driver schools, but there wasn't all the coaching and all that, and all the physics and science that everything's imparted. You know, how did you go faster? And he said, you just went faster. I don't know. You needed to find some time. You found it. It was, yeah.
When you're as good as Sam was,
well, that's true.
You can do that. But to us mere mortals, just go faster. Okay, but how? Tell me what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Those that are truly blessed with supreme talent, they don't necessarily need someone in their ear telling them what to do all the time. And they just naturally know what to do when they strap in.
Tell you, this guy's been impressive here. Charles Whittall up into 6th now, started 13th in class. He has marched his way to the front with some really aggressive overtakes. It's been impressive to watch here. And Wetherill, leading in the Coppa Shell Am points, now sits 3rd overall, obviously with Booth's issue, behind Milstein and Horseman. Coleman right with him. And again, Coleman comes into the championship not that far adrift either. So 5th in the point, so right up in the mix here. They're 1-2. Then Schreibman, who just hasn't been able to figure out a way to get around those two guys. But John Lennon now up into 3rd. He, too, in that borrowed car, essentially. And I think that speaks volumes about how, these 488 Challenge Evo cars are very, in a way, plug and play.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are remarkable machines, easy to tune to each particular driver, but you get in it, and it's like, okay, I know this car, now let's tweak it a little bit, and you can hustle it. And that makes this experience for these drivers all the better as well.
And speaking of plug and play, what makes this so great as far as the ladder system that is all under the Ferrari umbrella here, you talked about this earlier, a lot of the things in the car, the creature comforts, the steering wheel, things of that nature, are going to look awfully familiar when you jump from this car into a GT3 car, right? And it just makes that transition that much simpler.
Absolutely. A little more downforce than the old Challenge car had, and but a lot more power than a GT3 car. So you like to go from having that downforce to control it, and we're about to find out just what they're capable of, because we're going back to green, and it's Milstein now. The number 138 Ferrari of San Diego entry is going to lead him onto the front straight. Horseman right behind him, that's second overall and second in the Coppa Shell category. But behind them, Wetherill and Coleman is close. He might be taking a look. Wetherill senses it, drifts to the left just a little bit. Coleman going to go straight to the apex. Now he hops behind it, and that's going to get him around, and that gathered up Horseman just a little bit. And I think Wetherill was able to slide through. And, oh, such bad news as Coleman was trapped as well. He got trapped up by it, and a number of other cars now behind him. 153 is involved of Neil Langberg. And so Coleman's sitting there. Everybody had to start to check up and figure a way to get through. It looks like we may have had a little bit of contact there on top of it. So that's not what you want to see. You can see the 113 of Kirk Beyervalt involved. He's got a little bit of damage from the contact. He's got to be very careful here. You hate to see that, Ryan. You
do. I understand where the impetus to make the move comes from. Just a couple of minutes left in this race. That might be your last best chance. Oh, boy, we might see 3 wide here in just a moment.
This is pretty fierce stuff here, as that's Wetherill. It looks like Schreibman here is trying to figure out a way to get by Horseman. And again, everybody knows we're down to the end of this one here.
I'm seeing full course yellow on our timing screen, and I thought I saw a double yellow at one of the Marshall stations, so that might be, even though it's there, it is.
There it is. Yeah, and that means this one's definitely going to finish, I think, under caution. I think part of the problem is one of those cars down in turn 1, and I couldn't get the number, but it was the car that had nosed into that car sitting there. You can see some steam coming off, which generally means it may have tapped hard enough to break a radiator. So even if that car was able to move, there might be a lot of coolant down in there. It is.
Yep, spot on, Greg. Good look at the liquid there on the surface, on the racing line, no less. So, and now we see the safety car taking the long way around here to avoid that situation.
Yeah, I got to tell you, that barrier right there that they're turning in front of, or behind, essentially. My first visit to Indianapolis, I flagged the first Formula One race here, and that was our station for qualifying, and man, was that a great place to watch. Okay, speaking of watching, here we go. And again, late move, realized what the problem was, got up over the back of that curb, and everybody kind of got through here, but behind him, people were checking up, and that's when it happened, I think, Ryan.
And Greg, the best of the best have done that same thing there.
Oh, you bet.
That turn 1, it's such a funnel effect. It's so wide on entry, but by the time you get to apex and especially exit, it is 2 car widths, basically, is all you've got to work with. And yeah, that was just a case of running out of room.
And I think that may have been Christopher Aiken, the car that ended up with the damage to the front. Comes in tied in the point, only 1 point in fourth, only 1 point out of third. This will be devastating if it was indeed him here. And there is Justin Wetherill. Boy, what a season he has put together here. Boy, I'll tell you, that is just frustrating, obviously. And you hate to see this kind of thing happen, but this is how it's going to finish, under caution. But Wetherill puts together another win, and it will be his 4th in 5 races. How's that for performance here? And that You Break, You Fix, it's a company that he co-found, or actually found. He created it himself. And it has blown up. And there are a lot of clumsy people like myself that are grateful for it. That's for sure. But here we go as the checkers are going to fly. The FA Tributo leading the field through. And Kevin Milstein, fist pump. He gets the win. Remember, he had pole, got jumped a little bit, and ends up coming back with a win. Wetherill 2nd place and 2nd overall for a Shell AM category drive. That's pretty remarkable. Then Horseman, 3rd overall, 2nd in Coppa-Shell. Schreiben 4th overall, 3rd in Coppa-Shell. And then Jan Bernier, what an impressive performance he is putting in this year as a true rookie in the championship. And that number 132 Ferrari of Seattle entry. Dave Musial is 3rd in class. Dave Musial Jr. in the 130 Ferrari Lake Forest. 4th is Charles Whittall, who had a storming drive here today. Just fantastic in the number 166 Ferrari of Central Florida entry. So good news for those drivers. The bad news is they had to finish under caution, but everybody understands that's why you race hard start to finish here, is that you never know what's going to happen in racing, and you get a caution like this, and that can create a scenario where you could end up finishing or just circulating for a while, and you want to be as far up the order as you possibly can when that happens. So congratulations here as they are being led around that Hublot safety vehicle. I want to give a thanks to the fine folks from Hublot. And for the drivers that had some sort of an issue in this race, one of the really nice things about doubleheader weekends is you get a shot at redemption tomorrow. You have to qualify again, so there are qualifying sessions in the morning to establish the grids for tomorrow's races. So you get a little bit of a reset if you want it here. And let's take a look at the results here. As we just said, Milstein with the overall win and the win in Coppa-Shell. Horseman and Schreiben 3rd and 4th overall, but 2nd and 3rd in Coppa-Shell. Justin Wetherill, remarkable run again, up to 2nd overall, the win in the Coppa-Shell Am category, followed by Bernier, Musial, Whittle, and Aiken. And so maybe that wasn't Chris's car that was involved in that. I thought that's what the number was, but might well not have been. And again, it was interesting here because John Lennon had worked his way smartly up through the field and then seemed to drop back just a little bit. We didn't see what may have happened to him, but boy, did he show a turn of speed. And then in the top 10, Eileen Bildman, and this is a place she loves. As I said, she came here last year and ended up getting her best finish in the championship right here at Indy. So she loves racing here, and she put together another top 10 run. And did want to give a shout out. Her coach is Catherine Legg, and of course Kat got involved in a testing incident at Paul Ricard and is in the process of recovering. She should make a full recovery, but we sure do miss her and hope that she's watching and doing well. And can't wait till she gets back to the track to coach and certainly gets back to the track behind the wheel. She is something special and adds an awful lot, whether it's coaching or on track. And Eileen is delighted to have her as a coach. And here is the number 138 of Kevin Milstein. Last year did a few races, pro races in the SRO Motorsports America GT World Challenge in the Pro-Am category. And all these drivers, they always seem to come back here to Ferrari Challenge because they do love this. So they love driving their Ferraris and being part of this remarkable family. And that's part of what it is, from, as we said, the Corsa Clienti program is, if you are part of it, you become a member of this Ferrari family. And it's pretty remarkable as Kevin hops out of the car. And interesting to hear what his thoughts were on that start because, unless he had some sort of an issue, looked like he was trying to bring him up slow and Booth wanted to go a little quicker. And we'll see what Kevin says about that. And we'll also hopefully hear from Justin Wetherill about his continuing remarkable start to the season. Milstein did not run at Daytona, but in the second race at Road Atlanta, put together a third place finish and sort of served notice that I'm going to be somebody to deal with here. And boy, was he today. Absolutely fantastic. Let's take a look at some of the highlights from this one. And at the start, that's what I'm talking about. Milstein on the pole, way behind that red and yellow car of Booth. But the flag flies, the green flies. Horseman now up alongside Milstein as they head down the front straight. But Booth had a very clear lead by the time they got down to turn 1. Here was the guy on the move, Charles Whittle, and he got a great job done. He was absolutely dynamic on the brakes. Then this bit of a moment here, bit of an overshoot right there by the 113 of Kirk Beyervalt down into turn 11. And here again, Whittle, watch this move, just comes up really strong on the brakes, gets it woed down, turned in. Absolutely nobody could have defended that one. And then this was John Lennon trying to make some moves and then overshot the corner here and ran into the runoff area, and that's where he lost all of that time, obviously. And then coming back on right there, Cyril Choksi sensed that maybe Lennon was going to come across on him and lifted, and the back end snapped around, and that was a problem. And then this, late in the race, Todd Coleman trying to make a big move and got down, snapped loose over the curb, and that's what ended up under the yellows, and this is how it finished under full course caution. Once again with Milstein and Wetherill taking the 2 class wins.